Welcome to the 10th video in this series of Access to Work advice videos. In this video, I'm going to be digging deep into the detail you need to be thinking about when you submit your support plan to Access to Work. In video 9, I mentioned what I call the three-part harmony that any support plan needs. In video 8, I showed you a graphic containing 5 circles and labelled 3 of them: job coaching, the journey to and from work, and e-learning. Let's lose the 2 ovals and let's make the circles bigger. It's also helpful, at this point, if I make them exactly the same size and change their positions. Now let's label all of them: job description, organisation's procedures, person specification, training, including e-learning, and the journey to and from work, which is a kind of standalone circle. And I'm going to put our 3-part harmony here. Over the years that I've used Access to Work, I've only ever identified these 5 main circles that make up one sustainable job for somebody with hidden disabilities. Within each circle, however, there can be any number of different elements that make up the circle. I'm going to use an example of somebody called Joe, who works as a laundry operative at a residential home for people with dementia. Let's say there are 6 different main duties within the job description: sorting the items into those that need a cool wash and those that need a hot wash, using the machine itself, folding sheets, folding residents' clothes, taking clothes back to residents' rooms, and ensuring the laundry room is locked when Joe's not there. When I help somebody to write a support plan, I find it useful to write mini support plans for each of the tasks within a job description. You might want to do the same. Let's go back to Joe. Joe, with the help of his key supporter, estimates that without any job coaching or mentoring whatsoever, he's 80% fine with task 1 and 2, 100% fine with tasks 4 and 5, and 90% happy with task 6. It's task 3, the folding the sheets one, that he's most concerned about, giving himself a 30% rating on this, so needing a 70% input from his job coach to support him to be fully competent at this task. Think back to video 5 in the series where I talk about my 95% rule. If we average out the 6 parts of the job description, the job fit for Joe based on these is 80%, which is perfect for Access to Work involvement. If all 6 duties needed an 80% intervention from a job coach, put simply, this would not be the right job for Joe. So far, so good, but the job description is only 1/5 of the complete job. Let's look at the person specification next. For the ease of the graphic, let's assume there are just 6 main requirements and name the first 3. To have good communication skills, to be a good team player, and to be able to show initiative. This is where things can get tricky for Joe because he's autistic. No amount of job coaching or mentoring will make much impact on increasing his communication skills, and as for being a good team player, this will always be a struggle for him. Joe's mentor could perhaps make progress helping him interact with his colleagues, but if there's not much coming back the other way, it's not going to do a lot of good. Or how about if there's too much interaction coming back the other way? That could create problems that might not have been there in the first place. I think you see where I'm coming from on all this now. It might be that the overall fit of the person specification is only 40 to 50% right compared to the healthy 80% within the job description circle. But if it is, this should never be a deal breaker. Imagine that I'm Joe's key supporter and I'm helping him write his support plan to submit to Access to Work. I tell him he needn't put in a great deal of detail about how his job coach or mentor will help him increase his communication skills. You see, I would have put this into context. At the time of my second meeting with the employer, that's me as a key supporter, I would have told the employer a little bit about Joe's communication style. I would have said that whilst he would always say good morning or good afternoon to residents when he took their laundry back to their rooms, he would rarely be able to make eye contact with them and not be able to engage in any small talk. Would this be a problem to the management? Of course it wouldn't. Joe's the laundry operative, not the entertainments manager. But what I would say to the employer is that Joe's job coach or mentor would support him with his communication skills over important things. And what are important things? Well, here's an example. Let's say he was locking the laundry room at the end of his shift and for some inexplicable reason the key breaks off in the lock of the door. Joe's job coach or mentor would have advised him that it's this kind of thing he needs to communicate to his manager. I know this example will ring true to many parents watching this. Joe might simply get his coat and go home, simply because A, he thinks the key incident isn't very important, or B, he thinks that when his manager finds out, they'll think it's his fault and Joe will get sacked. When you write your support plan with the help of your key supporter, you need to give careful consideration to the person's specification. Don't swamp yourself in too much detail. Just think of a few simple things that your job coach or mentor can put in place that are going to help things along. What I want to make clear about the person specification circle is this. Whilst it's worth chipping away at a few things, and these should be mentioned on your support plan, this circle also has the most joy. In fact, I often imagine crossing out the words person specification and writing the words personal qualities instead. And this is because I know that for every character trait that an employer might want to change a little in a new employee, there'll be 2 or 3 others that they wouldn't want to change for the world. It's why I've placed this circle where I have. All the others, apart from the travel one, are touching it. And in fact, I like to have it a little larger as well. This is the uniqueness that in my example would make Joe such a highly valued member of the staff team. What's in the red and yellow circles? Well, all of that can be taught. You can't teach somebody to be unique. And as for the yellow circle, the training one, let's say there are just 3 main objectives, but the first one is the e-learning one, and within that there are 10 different modules. For Joe, I know he would need support in all 3 main objectives. In video 4, I talk about training to around about the 8-minute mark and show you some footage of somebody called Alice who explains a little about e-learning modules in her role as a junior activities assistant at a leisure centre. Alice is happy for me to say she's about 75% confident of completing her e-learning modules successfully. She rarely has problems with the questions. It's the pressures, often tech-based pressures, around the questions that are stressful for her. Returning to our illustration, let's assume this is the same for Joe. As for travelling to and from work, let's imagine from Monday to Saturday, Joe's journey consists of 4 parts. 1. The 12-minute walk to the bus stop from home. 2. Ensuring he has enough time to buy from the mini-mart next to the bus stop his sandwich for lunch. 3. The 15-minute bus journey on the 77 to the town centre. 4. The 10-minute walk from the bus stop in the town centre to the care home. But on a Sunday, this becomes 5 parts because Joe has to take a 77A to the hospital where, after a 15-minute wait, he catches a 219 to the town centre. Within your support plan, if you need to include travelling to work, do so, but keep it completely separate from the rest of the recommendations. So, if your total support plan was 4 pages of A4, I suggest your travel strategy starts at the top of page 4. If I'm thinking of Joe as a real person, his travel strategy needs to be explained on his support plan to Access to Work. It needs to be done quite clearly. Access to Work like to use the term travel buddy, and they need to know what support Joe will need at each stage of his journey. The reason why I think of Joe as a real person is that he's based on a real person, and I was his travel buddy. The journey to work that caused him the most difficulty was the one on the Sunday. I can remember one Sunday, by which time he was doing the journey 95% independently, when he got very stressed waiting at the hospital because the second bus, the 219, simply didn't turn up. Meanwhile, I was waiting at the town centre bus stop, trying to reassure him on the phone that whilst the first 219 hadn't turned up, almost certainly the second one would, and in the meantime, we could phone work and explain to them that he'd be late. The main reason for keeping the blue circles separate from the other ones is this. With the help of your key supporter, you're going to have to price up the cost of the package to support you to get to work using a travel buddy. Travel buddy hours Access to Work expect to be at a lower hourly rate than job coaching hours or mentoring hours. I'm going to talk about pricing up the support plan in the next video, but for now, let's complete my explanation of the 5 circles. We're left with the green circle, and I would love to make the assumption that, for example, a residential care home employing laundry operatives would have more or less 6 main policies and procedures, but it's a bit more actually. That will do for now. I'm not saying there will be 60 main policies and procedures, but I'd imagine there will be at least 60 different individual policies, all of which will have a bearing on an individual's employment. And policy 39 might be just as important as policy 29, but might need to be interpreted differently if policy 59 needs to be brought into play. If you work for an organisation, especially if you work for a large organisation, have a look at your staff handbook. I'm imagining it's going to be secured safely on the cloud somewhere if you haven't got it in physical form. Judge for yourself how accessible the language is for somebody with learning disabilities or somebody who is autistic. You will see I've reduced the 60 policies back down to 6. When I help somebody with their Access to Work support plan, these are the ones that I highlight with a brief explanation on how the person can be supported to understand them. Probation period, annual leave, sickness, dress code, mobile phone usage and grievance. I tell the person they needn't give a breakdown on how each one will be tackled, but all of them should be mentioned with a few paragraphs of explanation as to the overall approach strategy. In my experience, if by the time a job coach or mentor has withdrawn from the workplace, the employee has a basic grasp of these, and we will have often made easy read versions of each to help things along, then that's a job well done. The reality is that 90% of the people that I've supported into work over the last 25 years will have always needed help from their manager or someone in HR with the annual leave policy. The HR person will help them keep tabs on how many days leave left they have in any one financial or holiday year. The HR person will help explain to them they book these in time to ensure that they don't miss out on them if the organisation doesn't have the flexibility to carry days over from one year to the next. I hope I've explained clearly enough to you the 5 circles that make up a support plan. I like to have a mini support plan for each circle, and you might want to adopt this approach too. You need to explain to Access to Work, with the help of your key supporter, how within each circle you can be supported to do your job to the very best of your ability. In addition, and this is important, You need to explain to Access to Work, again with the help of your key supporter, how long you want this support to last for. I talk about this a little bit more in the next video. If you need a job coach or a travel buddy, or both, you need to think about how your support can taper off. Your Access to Work advisor will probably use this phrase. What this phrase means is that in the early weeks or months you get quite a lot of support, but later on, when you've got to grips with the job and the journey to work, you get much less support, before finally you're completely independent. It's quite likely you will need help from your key supporter to help explain how this tapering off will work in practice when you put together your support plan. So that's the support plan 3/4 explained. The 4th quarter is that part where you need to explain to Access to Work how much money you need from them to put your support plan into place. I explain the 4th quarter in the next video, video 11, so I'll see you there.